everybody, my name is Csaba, and my sincere apologies, but my Russian isn't really great, so if you don't mind, I'll stick to English for now. And I hope it will be useful for you guys, and despite all the food coming. I guess in many perspectives, it's going to be a little bit different from what we heard so far. But it's been very useful, and thanks for having me today. I learned an awful lot about affiliate, so I really appreciate that I can be here today, and I hope it can be very useful to you guys as well. I haven't tried this, but fingers crossed it will work. Here we go. So a couple of things I'd like to talk about to you today. A little bit of trends in finance overall. First of all, in the last year, and also we'll look at more in-depth trends within finance, and we'll have a look at what data is there for you guys. And based on that, we'll take it a little bit further, and we'll talk about, strategies how to make some of your traffic, some of your more direct traffic to your websites, perhaps a little bit more efficient, a little bit more useful or handy. Okay, so. Number one, Google starts with people. We are really here to provide a super user experience. So we always appreciate if you are relevant and if you're fast. So that is the number one priority when it comes to Google. And you probably know all these properties, YouTube, Google Maps, Google Search, Android, Chrome, Play and Shopping. It's great, didn't miss any of them. So you probably know all these, and you probably know that as well, that it's around 3.5 billion people today who use internet. That's around half of the population. In 5 years' time, the population will grow to around 8 billion. And we expect, or we have forecasted, that around 7 billion people will reach the internet, okay? So that's another 3.5 billion. So when you think everybody's on the internet already, it's not really. So all that growth, or mainly that growth, will come from Asia. And if I look at businesses here, it's quite likely that it's very, very related new audiences to internet will come to you guys. So this is super relevant to you. So let's have a look at how do people behave in all that 2.5 billion people. What do they do when they search, and what's relevant out of that for you guys. So around every minute, so since I've been talking, it's probably 4 minutes, every minute there's around 2.5 million searches. So since I've been talking probably 4 minutes, there's maybe already has been 10 million searches. So I think that's quite important to notice. But let's go into finance a little bit more in detail. But before we do that, I want to recommend you 2 little tools to go a little further about, how do people behave on the internet. So people behave on the internet various different ways, and different people from different countries would do that in different way. So there's 2 tools. Number one is related more to speed. So there's a tool called Test My Site. Okay, so you can check how quickly your website works. And you can also compare it to other industry peers, and it can give you recommendations to make it faster. Number 2, it's called Consumer Barometer. It's also a free tool, and you can check out how do people behave in terms of different types of devices in different countries. So when you try to attract a certain audience, you can check in terms of demographics, in terms of gender, in terms of what device, how they use it, how they make decision, do they search online before they purchase or before they make a financial decision. So all these things you can check on Consumer Barometer for free. So it costs you nothing, and I think it's worth using it. So about searches, so this little donut here, this is searches from 1st of April in 2017 until end of March this year. So that's around 40 billion searches up there, okay? So this is how we search when it comes to financial trends or financial terms, sorry. So most of it's investing and then credit and lending. So the credit and lending, which is probably you're most interested in, it's quite a large chunk. And if you think of, 35% of 40 billion searches, I think it's quite relevant. So what I want to say with this, you probably want to be present on search. You can do that obviously organically, and obviously you can do that through paid search. Now organically, I'm not an SEO expert. It takes a long time. It doesn't work overnight, but you can work on it. So that's something quite useful for you. A lot of you guys would probably have an SEO team and work on that. So I leave that for now, and we'll talk about paid search a little bit. But going beyond trends a little bit more, so let's look into just in the last 3 years, queries on investing has pretty much doubled. On in the last 3 years on credit and lending, it didn't double, but it went up 150%. A little bit of seasonality, but not too much. If you look at, for example, financial planning, you can see start of the year, there's always a good bit of seasonality. Start of the year, people are a lot more conscious. New Year's resolution, let's have our finances sorted a little bit more, and they make decisions based on that. Same on, this is bank account, sorry, it's missing from there. So queries indexed on bank accounts in the last 3 years, there's also seasonality there. And on business finance, although the volume of queries is a lot lower, but the actual decisions based on that in terms of revenue, it's a lot higher. So I would still think this is a super important little information for you. There is huge seasonality. In summertime, everybody goes on holiday, so you can see that as well quite significantly. So let's look into paid search, and one part of paid search in particular which has been quite prominent, and actually quite a lot of my clients in finance use it, and this is where they're able to be a little bit more savvy to the other guys on the marketplace. So before I would jump into that, I'd really like to kind of know a little bit more about who is sitting in the audience. So please raise your hand if you're a publisher. Okay, and if you're an affiliate. Okay, cool. And if you're a loan provider, per se, okay, quite a lot of them. So thank you very much. That could be quite relevant to you guys. And if you're not using it, or perhaps you're already using it, you already know about it, but maybe I won't be able to explain it from another angle. So when AdWords started first, you could optimize for keywords, pick your bid, and in sort of a last click attribution model, you decided how much is a click worth for you, and happy days, job done. You're waiting for the clicks and for the conversion. Back then, conversion tracking wasn't really that big of a thing, so you sort of had a rough idea how much conversions you'll have after that. That was only 10 years ago, but it seems like ages ago. And then came in, smartphones, which is there is about in most markets, there's about 60 to 70% smartphone penetration. We tend to use our smartphones around 3.5 hours a day. We take it out around 180 times per day. So I'm quite likely to, struggle to actually keep your attention up and have you for 25 minutes until I finish the conversation, the presentation, before you would take your phone out. So it's really, really challenging. So I really appreciate if you don't take your phones out for 25 minutes, but I guess I'm really working against really big powers here. So when we go back to different devices and different interests and so on, it just bidding got a little bit more complicated. And then this is how it looks today. So there's another layer, there's so many layers how you can optimize your AdWords campaigns, your search campaigns. And that has become quite challenging and difficult. This is why we came up with an idea where you can automate quite a lot of that. So it's called smart bidding. So when it comes to smart bidding, we started to use our AI power on some of these bidding processes to make it a little bit more smooth, a little bit quicker, and also performing better on a better cost. So the good thing about it, it's super precise. and it's also auction time, so it's real time. So it's, you know, how good your PPC staff is, they're never going to be able to sit by the computer and optimize for every single auction, every single time, because obviously you're getting quite rather high traffic. It's impossible to manually optimize for all of these signals you have seen up there just a minute ago. So the other advantage of smart bidding is that it's actually optimize you on query level. So when you optimize on query level, it's very, very good when you talk about broad match and phrase match. So when you have one single keyword which actually matches for so many queries, it's very, very hard to do that manually. So if you're looking at a broad match and phrase match, smart bidding is super good for you. So that's something where I would definitely use it. So look at these real-time signals again. So there's certain signals only available on smart bidding. It's not available if you are working with a manual CPC or a manual search campaign. So this is another reason why it's really worth considering to maybe don't convert all your search campaigns at once from just regular manual CPC into target CPA, or we'll talk about the different models in a minute. But you can make experiments. You can just turn some of your campaigns into smart bidding campaigns. Right now in Central Europe, around 30% or above 30% of the search campaigns are already working on a smart bidding basis on a different types of models. But this is how it usually works these days. So if we move on again, these are your strategies what you can use in smart bidding. So obviously we'll talk about remarketing as well in a minute. Remarketing for search, you can maximize for clicks. I suppose the first one, I'm not sure how relevant this is for many of you. I guess you're a lot more sort of performance orientated than just to put bucket loads of money towards big keywords which have massive traffic, and you just want to be visible, you just want to be there on top of page. There is that technology as well, but I guess now there's other platforms where you can build your brand a little bit more efficiently. However it's there, you can do it. You can maximize for clicks. You can also just maximize for clicks to build audience lists for yourself for later to then target these audiences with different more appropriate messages. But what I really want to talk about is conversions and sales and lifetime value in particular. So enhanced CPC is something a little bit more basic. It's semi-automatic. I wouldn't really like to call it smart bidding. I think where it really is important to try, it's the target CPA. So say if you are trying to generate leads, you just set the goal, what that exact goal you want your consumers to achieve, and basically at lead generation, for example, we talked about Poland a lot. You can get leads, qualified leads on target CPA model less than 10 euros easy. I'm not sure if it's a good or bad number, but I think like my clients have been pretty happy with these figures. So I think it works for them. Your product or your solution may be somewhat different and therefore not that relevant, but this is what we can achieve these days. That's Poland is probably a very relevant market. And then, as you talked, there's a lot of high potential markets where it's not really that regulated. You have a lot of opportunities. I'm originally from Hungary, so including Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, so all of the Balkans, smaller markets, but it's really works there these days. So yeah, German markets, UK markets, sometimes it's really hard to break in because it's highly regulated and usually cost per click is quite high up, so it's a lot higher chance that you have to pay quite high target CPAs to achieve your goals. But it's there for you. The other thing, which is also, in particular with apps we talk more and more about, it's lifetime value. So you can optimize towards lifetime value too, which means that you don't actually only value that one conversion, what you get, but most clients will come back to you. So if you have a model, you can calculate that, say in the next 2 years, that client will come back to you 3-4 times. Then if you know that that client is worth that much for you, you can bid more aggressively. So for example, I talked about apps, so I'll bring that example back. So 70% of subscribers or users provide 85% of the revenue. If you think of that, you need to bid quite aggressively, or you better optimize for those 70% who will bring you 85% of your revenue, isn't it? So I think that makes quite a lot of sense. So let's move on a little bit. With sort of smart bidding, I'm pretty much sort of covered the basics. And obviously I'll be here after the event so we can chat about it a little bit more. The other thing is remarketing. So everybody heard about remarketing. You know, if you go up to booking.com and look up your next holiday in Amsterdam, granted for the next 2 weeks you're unless you're using an ad blocker, you'll be full of booking.com display ads. So search remarketing ads work a little bit different. However, the principle is the same, that you want to build audience lists. So you want to look into your analytics and look at what are the actions, what's useful and valuable to you, what your customers and visitors are doing on your website, and then create a list for them. And then you can retarget them mainly with 3 different options and ideas. Number 1, if they already arrived to your site based on one keyword, and that keyword is valuable to you because it's quite likely that they will convert from there. Number 1, you can use bid modifiers. For the second time, if they search for that keyword again, you can target them more aggressively. So just use the bid modifier. Number 2, those who already have been on your site with one keyword, try to attract them with a new keyword, which is lower down on the sales funnel. Obviously, we talk about when we talk about search campaigns, or we talk about keywords, we talk about, we have this theme. So we have the midfielders, the forwarders, the goalkeeper, and so on. So some of the keywords or some of the campaigns can be more of a midfielder or a defender campaign. So they bring big volume in that don't really convert that well. And then obviously you have the attacker or forwarder campaigns or keywords which will convert a lot better for you. So on someone arrived to your site with more of a midfielder keyword, a midfielder campaign, then you can try and retarget them with more of a finisher, more of an attacker keyword campaign. So that can be very valuable for you to sort of reduce that customer journey, because we know that people don't make decisions just like that. They normally need a couple of signals, a couple of events, a couple of touch points with you before they make any decisions. So be present, be there for them, and be there for them with the most relevant message at every single time, what brings you closer to close them. So the other thing as well, sometimes it happens that there's a freemium, say you have a wallet, an app with a wallet, and there's a freemium service and there's a paid service. So obviously, once someone has been on your site, you can then differentiate the way they came in. You can set up separate audiences for them. So based on how they came in the first time, second time, you show them an ad which is more personalized, and then you can either take them to the free or the paid version. So that's also a very smart move. So in the bottom line, the goal is that you actually monetize better on those clients who have bigger potential for you, and then you have to decide both on behavior, on their kind of internet behavior and on their site behavior. Obviously, now you have to get their consent, which I guess it sort of makes sense because it is their sort of data. But once you have the consent, and most people, if it's provided them the opportunity and the option and explain what they get in return by giving consent, I think they'll do it. So I'm super positive that GDPR isn't really going to mess up your traffic. Yes, will there be a few dips? Probably yes. But as long as you are fair, your terms are fair, and you're really offering something, they'll stick to you. And I think that's super important. And how the way you communicate it can make it a winner or a loser for you. So, so if you have someone down 5 times on your site, they're lower down in your sales funnel, just target them a little bit more direct message and try and close them down as quick as you can. So that's the bottom line. So how do you do it technically? First of all, you still place that pixel on your site, or set up these groups in analytics, set up the campaigns and let it run. Okay, so you don't have to do it. Test and play with it. You must admit that you need quite a big size. Oh, we are not there. We'll talk about that you need a certain size of remarketing list before this works well, because we need to look at plenty of signals before you can really make it work for you. So as I talked to you before, different visitors have different values, so differentiate them and give them value more those who have bigger value to you. Super simple. So what can you do altogether? So create your list, apply it on search-only campaigns. So this is completely different from the display remarketing, and then create them specific ads which are relevant. What you can't do, you cannot use third-party audience lists. Obviously, the big blue guys had difficulties with that, I guess. And you can't do search and content campaigns. And you also, when it comes to sensitive personal data, it cannot be based on that sort of behavior. So a couple of things to be mindful. In terms of policies, so your minimum size for remarketing list is 1,000 members, and list duration is 540 days altogether. As you know, so when you create remarketing list, just think of, if you show an ad, does that expose someone in financial difficulty? So if you can ask the question, and if the ad itself or the keyword itself, it doesn't exploit a financial difficulty, you're safe. But same thing with sexual, religion, so on and so on, you can't do remarketing on that. On financial status, you can, as long as it doesn't interfere with being in financial difficulty. So the wording is super important there as well. You want to make sure that it's clean and tidy. So in ad approval, there's a lot of things can go through if it's worded well and if it's not offensive. So this is just a couple of examples. I suppose this is more for an e-commerce player. This is more for a travel site. So I'm actually probably going to jump to the last one. So in this last one, what I explained to you before, a lot of times you have different solutions. Some of them have different value to it. It can be either free or different bundles, different packages. And based on your audience list, you can retarget these people with different messages and different landing pages. So you make them land on a page what you think best fit for that client. Just some about results. Conversion rate can be up as 3 times more. Click-through rates can be quite high too. So I suppose again, don't turn on your budget on this, but maybe try and tailor some of it to suit this model a little bit more. In particular, if you already have audience lists, if you have collected, or if you haven't stopped collecting and start having audience lists, and then once they grow large enough, try and use these campaigns as well. A couple of percentage of your overall budget, but it can work quite handy. So with that in mind, I'll be here, and if you used AdWords before, I can still help you, or if you're brand new to it, give me a couple of minutes. I'll run you through a couple of basics and a few support channels of how can you work and how can you make it work. And just to leave enough time for question, I'll be super brief on policy and GDPR, because first of all, on GDPR we have heard a lot. Second of all, I'm not a policy person, but it's more like resources. So yes, there has been a big enough change on AdWords in terms of what products and solutions can be advertised. If you search for it, it will bring you straight to the AdWords support page where it gives you enough answers. And if that's not enough for you, there's always phone and email channels where you can reach out to us and tell your exact situation, exact landing page, exact URL, exact ad group, and or keyword, and we can talk about that. And when it comes to GDPR, we have a site, what we created. This is policy.google.com. Again, it explains you much better than I could in 3 hours of what do you need to do to be compliant on our angle. We're quite proud that we made our changes internally on time. So so far we're looking so good. Actually, I just talked to a team which is responsible for GDPR. I think the amount of information is out there and the amount of in-depth information is out there. I think when on the actual day, last Friday, they got 12 emails globally. Sorry, in EMEA they got 12 questions on GDPR. This is how well they prepared for it. So this is their view, not mine. I don't want to take any credit for it, but it looks like we managed to sort of ramp up pretty well there. The other one as well, read the blog post. There's a lot of information there, and if you still have questions after that, then obviously you can turn to your account manager or reach out to customer service. But primarily read these 2 resources first, and then once you are well informed, then we can help you out. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate that it's afternoon. And you want to get going and jump to the next topic. But thank you very much for your time.
Do we have some questions? Yeah. We've got not a lot of time for questions, but...
Hello. Question is the following. So you mentioned about mobiles. And also desktop.
Yes.
With the current growth of Internet of Things, and also things like Google Assistant and like Amazon Echo, those things, how can we make sure, like people, that the things which will record our voices at home, for example, like I mentioned to my friend that I would like to buy a bike.
Okay.
That the Google will not listen to that, and next few weeks will offer me advertisement with the bike shops.
It's a very, very good question. I hope you understand that it's not a question to my pay grade. We can chat about it offline, but I don't really have an official answer for that for you. So it is a very good question, and I guess it sort of broke the internet in the last couple of days when you saw these videos on the bookings in the hairdresser or ordering pizza. But I think this is very much, if we go back to my first sentence, the way I started, that we are here for a good user experience. I just cannot foresee ourselves changing that. And when it comes to good user experience, I don't think it's about you being targeted on that basis.
So you need to find perfect balance between privacy and good
Exactly, isn't it? So that I suppose it applies already today. You know, how do you use your browser history? How much you delete it? How much you not? Do you let your ads be personalized and then be useful to you, or you just clear the tag the whole time so the system doesn't know what you like and then starts to, shove a lot of different types of ads in your face, what you don't really want to see, and then you get even more frustrated. So so there's a good balance between how much you tailor or how much you let in, how much you don't. It comes down to individuals. So how do you want to go by it?
Okay. Sometimes it's good to mute the microphone.
Yes. Hi. How popular is cloaking still on AdWords?
How popular is
cloaking?
What do you? I really haven't heard of that. So go for it.
It's basically you have 2 landing pages.
Yeah.
When a Google bot comes to test your ads, it's sent to a white hat landing page, and a visitor is sent to a placard landing page.
You cannot completely, cover all angles. If you think how much data is going up, if you think of how many advertisers are up there, and how many landing pages are out there, it's super hard for us to manually kind of look into that. But obviously, if you have any complaint in that respect, you write in the support page, and if we check that out then manually, then that will help you out. But I probably didn't answer your question. That's not my
the last question.
Okay, first of all, thanks for presentation, and I have a question. What is the most effective way to complain on my competitors which use restricted AdWords campaigns and break AdWords policy?
Very good question. We have a team for that. So there is a support page. So actually you can Google it and you will get a result for submitting complaints. It's all on the AdWords support page, and from then on it's one email, and there's no shortcuts. So if you write to that email address, that's the quickest you'll hear back. So that's checked not automatically but manually. So there is a little bit of queue there. So I hope you appreciate that. But it is being dealt with the whole time because it is happening. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.